welcome to the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. I'm Nick McDaniel. He's Myron Fancher. How the heck are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Those intros look great every time. Who are you getting to do that for you?
Me.
Man, once again, always impressed. Always impressed. Where can they find our wonderful work here?
Well, man, listen, we wanted to say first and foremost, thanks to everybody. A lot of good feedback for the new format last week that we did. The what ifs were kind of a hit. Appreciate everybody sending in. If you were, by the way, what Myron's saying, if you were a member on patreon.com/tappedoutpod, the paying members, even just at the dollar level, they get the show notes. And the show notes, you would have probably noticed there were several what if scenarios we did not get to. And that's generally the case on most of the shows, even the Tapped In Indie show and here, whatever. It's we try to make sure we just have enough content to get through the hour, so we don't actually get to dive into every single thing we put in there. So being even the $1 level, you're going to get to see everything that we put down in the show notes. And again, kind of the same structure this week, as well. Patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You get the shows early on top of that. You get the show notes like I was talking about. You get the articles that are coming out. You get a little bit of everything. But, of course, look, we also get it, guys. Hey, lots of people listening or watching on YouTube. Simply tappedoutpod.com on the YouTube channel. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe, turn the notifications on, all that good stuff. We always recommend, of course, Patreon just because you get all that stuff extra now.
Well, I mean, these notes, the notes we don't get to, read better than just about any wrestling website of these people that write wrestling stories, I can imagine. So I am so happy with the new progress going on. But speaking of progress, what did we learn Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday?
Well, look, let's start. So the topic this week is the missed opportunities. And again, thanks everybody, tappedoutpod@gmail.com for sending those in. But before we get into this week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the stuff that kind of happened over the weekend or the last week that was on the national scene. Of course, Myron, on Friday, everybody was all psyched. We were at a show on Friday up at SCA, had fun. But The Rock rolled out at Smackdown. And look, we had already heard the rumors, like it was, WrestleMania next year is going to be in New Orleans. Quick question. How many times does New Orleans get WrestleMania before we get one back in Atlanta?
What is their Convention and Visitors Bureau doing? They had the Super Bowl. It wasn't the SEC Champion. They had the Sugar Bowl, which they always have. How much money, though, are they spending to bring all this stuff in?
Look, that's kind of the thing now. And I think some cities just don't. We had this conversation, remember, about the cities that maybe just don't see the value in it. They don't see the math in it. But like Indianapolis was super aggressive, clearly like Philly and New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
Now New Orleans. So a lot of more of these cities are doing it. It's just crazy that Atlanta, I'm like, it's the busiest airport in the world or the country for sure. And then it's like we're centrally located. I mean, there's conventions, there's hotels, everything.
Yeah, we got the stuff. It ain't like we're gonna have to build hotels and stuff for you.
I'm like, you put the Mania in, Mercedes-Benz. You put irony that it is, Mercedes-Benz is the Superdome as well, by the way, in New Orleans. But you got the all of the Fanatic stuff you can put in the World Congress Center. So you've got everything you're going to need. But look, let's digress. Let's go back.
Imagine just riding downtown, just wandering around, going to all those indie shows, going to whatever TNA is going to do, just buying stuff, hanging out, trying to get your buddies on shows.
I mean, that's part of the challenge is about venues to run indie shows downtown. Especially if you're trying to run close to actually, to the stadium. That's not as easy as said, or that's not as easy as said.
Are there problems getting indie venues in Atlanta?
No, not necessarily. I would say not. It's just, there's somebody going to run probably. Somebody would run center stage that weekend. I would say somebody would run center stage, whatever. But, hey, we're wasting our breath because guess what? It ain't coming to Atlanta, it seems like, anytime soon.
Please.
But, look, that wasn't the only big news. Wasn't just that New Orleans is getting it. It was also the promo where he calls out Cody Rhodes. And why – look, guys, you don't talk about what happens on Raw and SmackDown and stuff is so detailed. No, we don't. This is kind of – we just talking about – this thing escalated up in a bigger scale when essentially I think the promo was good, and it wasn't great. It was good in my opinion, but what Rock said in the post-show press conference was more intriguing. That this thing's not even going to lead to a match, theoretically.
Everybody's like, well, The Rock doesn't understand wrestling if a rivalry can't lead to a match. Well, clearly The Rock understands wrestling because he has a stake in TKO. And in order to get a stake in TKO, he has to understand something. And if he doesn't understand it, he can just make it happen. Okay, his buddy Ari Emanuel just became a billionaire. So Rock's doing pretty good himself, too. So I am not worried about this. I am worried about one thing, though, Nick. If he gets Cody's soul, what is he going to do with all that adrenaline?
He's got plenty, and I think The Rock, he's got the electrical. He's the most electrifying man.
That's the only lyrics I know from Cody's song.
He probably needs the adrenaline to actually like charge all that electricity. But here's the thing I tried to say. Like originally, like look, I get it. When McMahon Austin started, I'm sure they knew eventually it would lead in the match, but they held that thing off as long as they could. Maybe this is kind of the same premise. Like, can we pull this off where it's just literally it's a Cody versus Rock, but it's like Rock using people he can control to fight Cody kind of thing. Kind of like McMahon in the beginning.
A long build. Maybe this is too late for WrestleMania. Maybe WrestleMania won't even be the spot for Cody. Maybe The Rock's first champion will be the spot. And they drag this out all year.
Rock is not unfamiliar with doing an angle that's a year from now. Hey, we're going to have this match a year from now. Now they're not going to announce it maybe. They just build to it over the next year. And it started when he announced it think about it. He announced that that's where Mania is going to be, and then that ends up being the match where he faces Cody next year maybe. Maybe. They just build that story for a year. Because here's my take. Now, the other logic is, of course, we're going to get Cena, Rock, Cody in a triple threat. Rock weasels his way into it. Dude, I'm all in. You want to build Cody? Have him beat those two guys in one night. By the way, it's also how you get Cody or how you get Cena out of the match without winning. Because you got another party involved. He doesn't have to get beat. They could be something wacky, whatever.
No rules in a 3-man race. You can't
Lots
be
of
disqualified.
Stuff. Yeah. So, but look, Rock does announce that he's going to get it. He wants his answer to, is Cody going to give him his soul? Is he Rock Undertaker? I mean, is that what he's going to become? I don't know. But the Elimination Chambers, where supposedly this is going to we're going to get that question answered. So we're going to obviously know at that point. I don't know what part of the show it's going to happen. So we may or may not know who the winners of all the matches are at that point. So I know we typically go, and so this weekends are difficult now, especially on Saturdays when they do these PLEs on Saturdays. Makes it difficult to choose indie show, PLE.
So far we've got a pretty good record of waiting till we get home to see the PLE, except for Royal Rumble and Mania. I think that's reasonable.
I mean, nobody's insane enough to run against WrestleMania, right?
We've seen in the past that insanity and independent wrestling go hand in hand.
Yeah. But anyway,
that's their tag team partner.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, let's dive into it real quick because I know we'll watch it at some point. We'll probably.
I'll watch it when I get home.
Maybe I'll probably watch some of it. Some of it I'll wait till the next day. I'm with you. So let's just real quick. Is there one particular match? We're not going to go through the whole card or anything. Is there one that stands out that you're wanting to see more than the others? Or
Women's Elimination Chamber? I think that's going to be a lot of weird dynamics. Roxanne Perez, and then the former tag team champions, Naomi and Bianca Belair.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that little, you want to break up a tag team? Put them in the Elimination Chamber together. That one is the one I'm looking forward to. Cena in the chamber, that's fascinating, but I can't see him giving it to Cena right now. Unless they want him to have a reign that lasts from WrestleMania until January.
I'm coming the other way. I think he potentially could win. I am so excited. I have no idea who's going to win this men's chamber. I literally have no idea. Here's the problem. I do think they have showed their hand in the women's. I think the winners are easily picked at this point. Because look, you brought it up, Belair and Naomi, they're going to fall apart over who attacked Jade Cargill. I think Jade Cargill's going to return, and we're going to find out it was one of them, obviously. Roxanne Perez, look, she's not ready to be like, in a main event, quote unquote,
Real
level
time.
match.
Let's give it a real.
Bailey, been there, done that. Liv Morgan, she's now a tag champion, so they're not going to. You see, I think you've narrowed it down to Alexa Bliss at this point in her return. So that's just my thing. I think that's your winner. But
yeah, she's hot right now. She's super popular. She's still got that I was with the Wyatts gimmick. Now, and where are the Wyatt Six?
Maybe that's their return.
Yeah, so that's a perfect setup for that. The women's match, the tag team match, not over, or is that a tag team match? Tiffany and Trish are working very well together. We'll see how that goes. Nia did not look good on the last show. I really am enjoying to see what I keep calling her, Johnny Gargano's wife, Candice LeRae. She's doing great right now. So I there's a lot going on. Not super excited about that match. The Sammy and Kevin match, the danger of someone getting hurt, the way they're booking it, kayfabe, the danger of someone getting hurt. I can see where that would be interesting. But they got those giant 5-chamber, whatever, the whole thing with Elimination Chamber, and they've got the countdown, ding, ding, and the door opens. It's the whole spectacle of it all that I love.
I mean, look, I'm probably going to go to a show. Deciding there's 2 shows to go to, catch the Chamber the next day, see who won, try to dodge. I will never dodge probably the winners on social media. It probably can't happen, but we'll see. Look, speaking of that PLE, a pay-per-view was announced over they announced Double or Nothing 2025. Not a lot to dive into, but I thought a couple things that were interesting. One, they've pretty much always done it over the Memorial Day weekend, and they're still going to hold that tradition. It's going to be Sunday, May 25th. It's been held both, so that's not the shocker. The shocker was it's literally the day after Saturday Night Main Event, which isn't a big deal. It's a free show. It'll be on TV and on Peacock. Not a big deal. But I did find it ironic. So it's a little over a month later after WrestleMania. Double or Nothing's it's always been in Las Vegas, got the casino theme. They've announced they're going to move it.
What happens out there in Glendale, Arizona? I don't know that much about geography and society.
Well, they have a giant football stadium there, but that's not where they're running. But they have a hockey teams. They've got team. I don't know. I'm not from Arizona. I don't know the laws.
Like Cherokee, North Carolina, or
no. But I just thought it was ironic they left Las Vegas because it's like, hey, you're going to run 5-6 weeks after WrestleMania. Is that town going to be? I don't know that they needed to move. I guess was what I was trying to get to.
I don't see why. I don't think it'll be burned, in my opinion. But
there's a lot of shows there, dude. There's going to be so many indie shows and stuff like that around there. I mean, it's crazy. So I just thought it was unique that they are running the day after Saturday Night Main Event, but they didn't move it out of Las Vegas. I would have stayed, just me personally.
I think so too, but I'm interested to see how this works out. It'll be something we'll talk about later. It'll be one of those things that come up later on the show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But listen, TNA Unbreakable 2025 was announced. Why is that a big news? Hey, you guys are going to talk about TNA? Yeah, we're going to talk about it because it's part of the deal. They've got this little partnership that they've got going with the WWE. They essentially have announced that it's going to be the Thursday leading into WrestleMania weekend. So how about them partnering a little bit and riding the piggyback wave of WrestleMania? So really good job.
Get some of those people that didn't make the Mania card, have them on the big TNA pay-per-view, have them just pop these people. You're going to have Joe Hendry in town. You're gonna ride that wave, man. I think this is brilliant. I honestly think the TNA crossover stories have been the biggest story of wrestling in 2025 2025 and towards the end of 2024.
I do think that it's going to be I know they have an NXT show wedged in there one of the mornings before Mania, but I would not be shocked if we don't see matches built to where some NXT talents are on the TNA card on Thursday as well.
What if we see a Mania promo of some kind? What if we see a guy show up and do something? I love it. I'm thinking I'm happy. So
they're going to be in town all week, so I do think they have the advantage that it's not like they're having to fly someone in to do the appearance. They'll probably already be there, so they do have that advantage that they don't typically have. So it's kind of cool. Lots of pay-per-view PLE news this week, as far as all the companies across. But, Myron, let's get to what everybody's probably here for.
Pay-per-views, opportunities we missed.
Yeah, so we asked everybody, as you probably heard, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Hey, send in some of the biggest missed opportunities in your brain that in pro wrestling history. Obviously, we got a bunch of them. We use some of them. Some of them we're going to save. We're going to probably bring the what if back, the missed opportunity show. So there's going to be kind of a recycled thing. So you can keep sending those ideas in, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. And if you're on a Patreon, patreon.com/tappedoutpod, you can always comment on episodes where we do this about ideas for the future ones as well, because they'll be right there in the comments and we can see those as well. But without further ado, Meyer, let's jump into it. One of the ones that I got the most, and I'm not shocked in the least, was how come WWE never booked The Undertaker and Sting when they were both in WWE, like
just
2014 to
2014. On the table, just left it there. Nobody got that money that they could have put into wrestling. All your supernatural characters. Now, which Sting are we talking? Surfer Sting? We talking Crow Sting?
No. He was there as the Crow Sting. When he was there, he was the Crow Sting. So it's like, why not? Like, dude, it's like I said, it made no sense. I mean, it's, you got like you said, the supernatural stuff, the dark, the dead man versus the vigilante Sting with the paint, I mean, look, think about it. Since the day Sting debuted in the rafters in WCW, fans were booking that, fantasy booking that one. I mean,
I'm over there watching Nitro and because Marvel and DC are doing a crossover now, aren't they?
Yeah, they got one coming in a few months.
So if you can imagine when you were back, folks, when it was Monday Night Wars, when you could see these people, they're on these shows, but you really wish you wouldn't have to flip back and forth. You could see them all in one place. This was your dream match. This was it.
It was a big one for sure, man. I mean, look, the problem was, obviously everybody was waiting for Sting. We just all assumed, even when they were purchased or whatever, Sting would get there. And he just never did. He did the TNA route, did that for years. 2014, he shows up. When he shows up, think about it, dude, there were graphics. That's all we were talking about at the time. He's there. We're finally going to get it. We didn't care that they were older. We didn't care at all. Like, we still absolutely wanted this match. However, Sting gets in a feud with Triple H instead. We get that absolutely goofy WWE WCW nostalgia match where DX is involved and the NWO is involved. Everybody seems to love it, but Triple H just blasts him with the sledgehammer and beats him.
This seems to me, this was a vanity booking thing, in my opinion. It seems to me like Vince wanted to do the whole thing where he showed his chosen champion, the one he would have picked to destroy WCW, destroying WCW again. Rub it in, grind that in, make it look. I mean, why else would you do that? Why else would you put Triple H versus him?
I don't know. I mean, it even worked. Like, I don't mean this in a bad way. They took Taker off to the side and put him with Bray Wyatt instead. And we're like, wait, we could have. It's cool. Like, everybody liked it. But if you were going for the dark forces or whatever, it's Sting. It's Sting and not him. And look, we eventually, they thought about it apparently, but Sting had the neck injuries and all all that kind of stuff. So he just kind of was gone it's like they just didn't happen. And by the way, let us not remind you, we're talking WrestleMania 31 is when this should have happened. Most realistically, that's when it should have happened. Sting does the Triple H match instead. Taker does Bray Wyatt instead. We had just come off the fact that Taker had lost the streak the year before. I get it. A lot of people thought, in their brains at that time, Bray and Taker. Bray should have been the guy that beat the streak. If the streak was still intact, I agree.
Yeah.
Because Sting shouldn't be the guy to break the streak because Sting wasn't there all those years. But since he had already lost it, why would we not just go ahead and give us that?
It seems like the only person that benefited for this whole WrestleMania 31 thing was Bray Wyatt, because it helped him get this character going, and that character was a massive financial success for WWE. I don't know how it was viewed by him, because he had all those issues after that. It was a good opportunity. It was an ideal opportunity, and you were telling me Sting wanted it.
Sting wanted the match. I mean, look, he's been out publicly saying that he wanted the match. The fans wanted the match. It probably could have been arguably one of the biggest. Ooh, where does it rank on the WrestleMania match Mount Rushmore if these two actually end up having this match? I mean, I get it. A lot of people are going to make the case for, like, hey, they were both at the end of their careers. But here's the thing. I've noticed that when guys get to the end of their careers, what they lack physically in the ring, like upstairs, they understand what the people want, and they can still give them that.
I was watching clips from LFG, and Taker was explaining back and forth to one of the kids. And it was just like, that's profound wrestling knowledge. Like, beyond anything I'll ever be able to grasp. What happened to managers anyway? Why couldn't Sting come back and manage somebody?
So you would make the case that he kind of quasi did that for Darby Allin. He just wrestled with it, but as well. But that's kind of what he did. But here, look, let's give the scenario, Myron. Let me ask you this: let's run, instead of what we got when Sting debuts. Remember they did it. He showed up in a box or something. You remember that? Anyway,
no, I don't
whatever.
remember that one.
So Sting debuts if he makes his debut, he shows up the Raw after WrestleMania 30. Taker's just lost. He's lost the streak. Taker's down, whatever. Sting debuts and he points the bat at the Undertaker. We literally could build that match for a year.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. It's not like you're unfamiliar with it. You did it with Cena and Rock. So for 1 year, these two talk about, because Taker was already in his phase of where he was only wrestling like once a year.
Yeah.
He was wrestling at Mania, and that was kind of it. Just build and build and build promos and Sting and Taker going back and forth, back and forth. Sure, Sting probably has a match along the way with somebody, but his whole goal is, I want you at WrestleMania. And that's what we get at 31 instead. Just would have been, and then Taker could have been doing stuff on the screen and the lightning bolts and go back to the dead man gimmick and all that kind of stuff. But what do we know? It could have been literally like they had the end of an era match with Triple H. That would have been another end of an era match. Those two having their, and by the way, we do eventually get to the cinematic stuff. What if we just start there then? Does WWE got do they have the foresight to go ahead and make that?
That would be the place to start it.
Right.
That would be the place to start it. I mean, God, I can't even. I'm at a loss now for ideas. Good, bad. We could have done this. We could have done that, because I'm just still wrapped up in the idea of Sting and the bat and Taker and the roll your eyes in the back of the head and you see lightning bolt type stuff. Yeah, fanboy moment.
I mean, look, it's probably one of the ones we got the most as far as people to talk about. Send in your thoughts, like, hey, what would you have done? tappedoutpod@gmail.com. How would you have booked Taker and Sting instead of all the other stuff that we got? Brought us to our second most. We got this one a lot as well. The invasion angle, 2001.
Massive botch, in my opinion.
look, we talked about a little bit about on the What Ifs episode last week. It absolutely could be. It ranks up there with one of the absolute worst. What they did. Well, first of all, look, there were some issues. By the way, let's be fair. When WWF purchased WCW, Goldberg, Sting, Flair, Hogan, Nash, Scott Hall, a lot of those guys, the big name guys, they had their money deals. They could sit at home, draw their big paychecks. Okay, they're not coming.
Those deals weren't with WCW, right? Those deals were Time Warner deals.
Correct.
So when WCW folded, they still had contracts.
Well, they were with all of the contracts were with Time Warner, AOL, the big parent company. That's just the way their contracts were at the time. The problem was they had guaranteed contracts that they were going to get paid regardless. They could sit at home, and it's like, why would I give up? Because most of to buy out the contracts, WWE was going to pay pennies on the dollar. Yeah. They weren't paying the full amounts. So you want me to take a whole lot less money and come get into the ring and potentially could get hurt, or I can sit at home and draw the full amount of my check for the next year and a half, 2 years, or whatever. So I get it, folks. I'm not blaming them.
I'm looking for that job right now.
Yeah, right. Now, instead, we get Buff Bagwell, Lance Storm, Sean O'Hare, and eventually Booker T got there, but, in the beginning, it just was, it was who it was. So we just didn't have any of the top guys to actually. So my thing was, that's why we don't have. Should you have done it at all at that point? Because should you have waited until you could have gotten some of those guys? And
did this have less impact than Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Chris Benoit sitting on the front row? Did that have more impact?
Yes.
Did they impact the company more?
Yes. 100. I would absolutely say that. I mean, because that was a shift of hey, guys are starting to come back. And it was not just, this was like guys who were kind of think about it. Benoit left, he was the champion. So, I mean, the reason everybody thinks this is such a missed opportunity is because it had the potential to be groundbreaking. They wanted, hey, this thing to take off. They could have given Smackdown could have been a WCW show or vice versa.
Yeah.
WWE be the other show. This thing just went nowhere. It was literally at one point they were finally let's just put this thing out of its misery and end it.
So they pulled the trigger too soon is what your theory is.
I don't know that too soon's the problem. You just didn't have the players needed to pull it off. So either you were going to have to go all in and pay those guys to get them, or just come at it later when you had, the better thing. Because it's just, let's say they wait to 01, 02. Then they could have, when they signed Goldberg, Flair, Nash, Hogan, all those guys, and then brought them in at that point, then you could pull it off. You know what I'm saying? Because then you got Stone Cold, The Rock, Taker, Triple H, versus those guys we just talked about, the Flairs, the Goldbergs, the Stings, the Hogans, the Nash, all on and on. But because they kind of put the metal to the metal, you don't get those guys at all. You end up with, like I said, no disrespect to Buff Bagwell, Sean O'Hare, etc.
I've always liked Lance Storm.
Yeah.
I've always liked Lance Storm. But he's not the guy on the forefront of an invasion angle.
So it was so bad that eventually we pull the trigger and we go, okay, let's get the ECW thing in. Convolutes it even more, by the way. Here's why. Because they add Paul Heyman to the mix. They add ECW to the mix. In theory, you can understand kind of, sort of, right? WCW and ECW teaming up to take on WWF at the time. WWF at the time. Sorry. But WCW and ECW never liked each other.
No.
And to be blunt with you, let's not forget, WWF was feeding money to ECW to keep them afloat.
Yeah, and they got all the top end talent already. They already had all the talent. I mean, the Dudleys were probably more successful in WWE than they'd ever been. Taz was there. Rhino was there. What are you looking for? I mean, who was going to be there? I mean, Paul Heyman was a great face for the whole thing, but
Right, but like I said, you brought it up. Like some of those guys, like the ECW guys that were already in WWF at the time, didn't make any sense to why they had been in WWF. So why would they be siding with WCW against WWF?
Yes.
It literally, and that. But here's the worst part. It gets even worse, folks. This is why we get. This
was what blew my mind.
Yeah, let's make Stone Cold the leader. Wait, what? So the biggest guy in WWF decides he will go lead the WCW team, the WCW company that fired him via FedEx. And ECW, look, I understand him getting some of the, he rehabilitated himself in ECW before he came to WWF, and a lot of people don't remember that. But even then, he still wouldn't have sided with the WCW brand. There's no reason why. And it made no sense for him to be, to join them because he was.
They had to give him some star power. They had to give him some pop since they didn't have it.
No, that's 100% why they did it. That you didn't have a choice because they didn't have anything.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, but
you were saying, I mean, who would lead it? Who could have led this? Because I mean, there's only one person I think could have led this efficiently, and I'd have been Flair.
Yeah.
But he wasn't there.
Nope.
Some people said Goldberg, but I don't think I ever heard him say anything besides "Feed me more."
That was Ryback, but
oh shit!
Yeah,
all
but
guys. Did Ryback kick Bret Hart? I don't know.
But yeah, so
DDP maybe.
They had Booker T, and he kind of was in that forefront and blah 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 whatever. DDP worked himself in. I'm just kind of like, I think it's Flair and Flair alone. Or by the way, you should have dropped all the cash and got Sting. Let's go back to revisit our first topic. That he would have been here then and not later. You know what I'm saying? Because we could have eventually gotten it. This was earlier. This was 2001. He didn't show up there until like 2014. So, that we do it then versus, if you just up now, I know why he didn't want to come. There's lots of things he had with as far as the issues with the way the product they were putting on TV. We're taking all those things out. You should have paid him enough to get him. But in the beginning, let's just wrap this up with a bow. The fact is, they treated, because of who they had there, and this is a WWF/E. This is what they do, folks. It just is what they do.
This was Vince.
Yeah, WCW was inferior. ECW was inferior. They never stood a chance of even looking as equals because Vince wasn't going to have it happen. Like Rock pinned Austin, boom, it's all over. WCW, ECW, they never had a big win under their belt at all. Any battles along the way. The whole storyline, they just basically, let's just say it, they got punked along the whole one.
Okay, question for you. Do you really think this TNA thing could have happened with Vince in charge still?
No. Yeah, no, that's 1,000%. That would have not happened in the least. As a matter of fact, I mean, look, we've seen it. There was a track record. It was never going to happen. There's an article that I put up, by the way, patreon.com/tappedoutpod, that really goes in depth. It says it is behind the paywall. It's a great article by our writer who put it out there, like why now was the right time for WWE to do it, by the way. There was lots of good reasons, and they're not all like, oh, we're good guys. There's a lot of good reasons. Check that article out behind the paywall, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. But so anyway, so what they should have done probably, why not let Survivor Series 2001, let the Alliance, WCW, ECW win. WWE is off TV for a few months. Some of the stars could have rebelled. They could have fought back. Then we build to the big, because here's the thing, Survivor Series is in November, and maybe we lead to the big blow off at Mania. That's where they get their comeback.
Like, say what they're doing in Royston, Georgia right now?
A lot of cool stuff, man. I'm just saying.
Feltner's working. The president of the faction that left is now working at other promotions. that Friday night as a ring announcer.
Yeah.
How about those apples?
I mean, yeah, but instead, like you said, we got 5 months of Angle. Boom, it was over, and we moved on. Like, that was it. Like, the biggest potential storyline in the history of wrestling up to that point. And it was over in 5 months. We did it in 5 months, boom, and it was over. And it just we all block it out like it never happened.
I think in order to understand the impact of this, people had to have gone through the Monday Night Wars. And
Sure.
This was back when your remote control was damn near the size of a shoebox, and you had to go click, 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 click to catch the wrestling. You were always flipping back and forth, trying to see who was one-upping each other, and they were watching each other to see what was going on. It was crazy. It was the craziest time up until now. I think one of the best times in wrestling. Now it blows it away. I think now is much greater, but this right here was a huge, huge rivalry, and this would have set up these dream matches we could have gotten, and we didn't get them.
Nope, could have had Stone Cold and Goldberg. That was, by the way, I know I said Sting and Taker. This is probably like right behind it, right, or if not in front of it. At that one point, they were the two hottest guys in wrestling.
Yep.
And we wanted Goldberg and we wanted Austin. That was all we wanted. Look, we eventually did get Rock Hogan, still arguably one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. That's by definition of what the greatest match is. But we could have had it earlier. Rock would still have more time in his future. Hogan would have had more time. Taker, Sting, of course. Think about it. Again, we don't want to run an analogy to Squared Circle / APW now. But how about this is Mania at that time? To get control of the company back, it's Stone Cold and Goldberg, Rock, Hogan, Taker, Sting, Triple H and Nash, Kurt Angle, Ric Flair. Like, that's your card. Like, think about it. That could have been your WrestleMania card that year.
But what did we get instead?
We got Rock, Booker T, Kurt Angle versus Steve Austin, two WWF guys at the time.
Rock and Booker T was quality.
Here,
but
it was good.
Austin Angle.
But here's my problem with when I say this about Booker T. Booker T was a he was a superstar. He was a top guy in WCW. But he just absolutely achieved his levels that we all think of him now in the WWE.
Yes.
That he kept going. He was the one smart enough to bet on himself, take the deal, go in there and work, and just shot off now, he had a bumpy road in the beginning, but he ended up taking off.
Where is he every Tuesday night? He's sitting at that commentary booth, making money. He's influencing people. He's turned out to be one of the bigger names in professional wrestling to this day because of this. So
yeah,
kudos to him.
Yeah, like I said, absolutely, this thing should have completely ran out. It worked out a full year. WrestleMania 18. It should have been WCW versus WWF. That's your whole card. We went through some of the matches that we could have had, but we didn't. We got it. It was over by Survivor Series. 5 months. It was over. They stuck a fork in WCW. And to be honest with you, think about it. They just put the finishing touches on. They would go on to do an ECW brand thing later, and they didn't even do it well because it's almost like there's always a conspiracy theory that Vince just ran a terrible ECW just to put the nail in its coffin too so people would shut up about it.
Well, this seems just like a revenge plan. This entire angle just sounds like, Vince. Vincing. Vincing is the best word I can come up with for it.
He struggled for years to create the Raw versus SmackDown brand war. Imagine if he could successfully had pulled this off, and he could have owned both brands, and it would have been WWE Raw, WCW SmackDown. He'd have had two shows. You'd have had legit reasons to have the brand thing, going against each other because you'd have a lot of the WCW top guys over there on the one show, the WWE on another, and they just look. There was nothing more promising than this. They just literally hurried the process, completely messed it up, and all of us fans that lived through that Monday Night Wars saw this happen, and we just went, what? That's what we got? We were so disappointed that,
anticlimactic.
Very much so. Well, man, let's plow ahead. Let's go to the next one. We got a pretty decent amount was WCW letting Steve Austin go in 95. Look, I have extensively listened to multiple podcasts with Austin discuss this, Bischoff talk about this. Together, they did an episode of Austin's podcast and talked about this. Here's the crazy thing to wrap your head around. Like, I get it. Like, if you're a younger age, there's some time. There's some background needed to put this in perspective. Austin, when he signed with WCW, he was already like a really good wrestler. People don't remember, like, from the world class and all this kind of stuff. You know, he was already a good, but he really like honed his craft in WCW. Him and Brian Pillman as the team, kind of doing everything. Like, they literally were building, even at an early phase where he still was missing something. You could see Austin and realize he had a little bit of it. When they formed that team, they became one of the most entertaining teams. They were doing the little, like, the film thing coming to the ring and all kinds of crazy stuff.
You think this is ridiculous to think that if Steve and Pillman would have stayed together, Pillman might be alive. Maybe that's probably insane to say something like that. But I can't see why you would break up a money team like that. I've seen the pictures. They look like $1 million. Now, it looks like $1 million from that time era. I mean, for God's sake, this is the year we graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
This has been 1 million years ago, so things were different. But I can see this. I can see why I'd want to have these guys on my show. But what happened?
Because, look, Bischoff, he fully admits out to they him and the other guys, the higher ups, powers be, the creative team, whatever, they just didn't see Steve as a main event guy. Look, and by the way, for the record, I'll back up and say, look, hindsight's 20/20, and it's easy for everybody to say they did. You probably didn't. That most people didn't. I'm not saying we didn't think I don't think people were saying he could be. Sure, he could be. Lots of people could be. But nobody was sitting there going like, he's a main event guy. He's money. He can be, look, we all thought he was good. Really good. Very good. Call it what you want.
Well, it's one of those situations where somebody is really useful in one situation, but absolutely not in others. And they looked at their roster and said, okay, we can use this guy here. Maybe we got 2 Steve Austins. And you're the less charismatic of them.
So people also, when I talked about earlier when he like rehabbed into ECW, that was from our last topic we're talking about it. That's where he found like his groove with promos. He was okay on promos, but he wasn't really, really good like he became. He kind of found that little niche when he went to ECW. People forget in WCW, he just wasn't that great at it. He got injured. He was a mid-card guy. He was a tag team guy. He was okay at promos. So Bischoff, they fired him. I mean, I don't really think that it should be, that shocking. They're like, look, Austin was a really good hand. He wasn't a marketable guy, and besides, by the way, he was younger. So he didn't have the appeal of a Hogan, a Flair, a Savage and stuff. That's where Eric Bischoff and WC were putting their money at the time.
Well, how many times have we seen people get released and then come back 2 years later as much better wrestlers and much better characters because they've had more time to develop something? But unfortunately, there was no WCW or too many shifts or things had changed too much. And by the time he could have come back, he was already over somewhere else. So, man, when he was hot, there was nothing hotter. Everybody was stone cold. Everybody, Austin 316 said, I just whooped your ass. It was, man.
Right. But it took him being fired. Like, look, I get it. Again, hindsight's 20/20, and we're like, oh, you let the hottest superstar. Okay, when he got fired, he wasn't. He found that voice in ECW. We talked about that, obviously. It's where he got his attitude, where he got his anti-authority attitude, all of those things. That's who he became. That's how he became Stone Cold. He's not. Look, if he's still in WCW, maybe he's not pissed off. Maybe he's not angry. Maybe he doesn't have that chip on his shoulder to develop the character that became Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, good point.
So, look, so what if he stayed? What if they keep him, right? So they had to, I don't know, man. Look, what's your thoughts if they let him, they keep him, he stays in WCW? Everybody wants to talk about things of like, oh, he could have feuded with Hogan. He could have made top money. He could have been the younger generation. He could have teamed with Booker T, Goldberg, Diamond Dallas Page, all of those people. But that's assuming a lot. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he stays in a tag team with Brian Pillman.
Maybe they're the next Hardy Boys. Who knows? But what we got was amazing when it happened. It was just amazing when it happened. So
right. Instead, you're right. They let him walk. He joins. He's the ringmaster. By the way, terrible gimmick. Let's blame that. Let's blame that on WWF East. At the time.
Well, that was that time when they were feeding people characters that were just horrible.
Here's the thing, and I also I often tell people things about wrestling when I have conversations when they're like, "Oh, this guy could have made it if he'd have went here." This did it, and I'm like, timing's everything in wrestling. Timing is, to me, is almost as, it's not luck because work puts you in situations, but timing does matter. We've talked a ton about guys who had an opportunity, they didn't make it, or they didn't get an opportunity and they didn't make it. Mm-hmm. But here's the simple fact. Look, it's not as simple as like, oh, they let him go, so he went and became Stone Cold. Let's not forget, at King of the Ring 96, when the birth of the Austin 316 things happened, Austin wasn't supposed to win originally. Triple H is supposed to win. But because of the curtain call, they punishing him. He doesn't get to win, so they put Austin instead. So in the perfect world, Austin doesn't win and Austin 316 doesn't happen because guess what? It only happens because he's wrestling Jake at that King of the Ring. If he's not wrestling Jake, there's no reason for the biblical reference. So there is no Austin 316. Wrap your head all around that. None of that. It's obviously, look, things did happen. They happened for a reason, for whatever. He goes on, he wrestles Shawn, he wins the title, Mike Tyson, rocket ship on his ass, and he becomes the biggest superstar in pro wrestling history, in my opinion.
Well, that just goes. Wrestling is such a finicky business that the biggest stars may never have got a chance, and the ones that got a chance may not ever be the biggest stars. This was, like you said, a timing and opportunity issue, and a lot of politics are involved in this kind of stuff. And if they shorted Steve, if Bischoff was not the guy for Steve, maybe Vince was, and this worked out.
Yeah, because here's the irony. A lot of people think like, okay, so what if they had kept him, so do you think Austin becomes one of the biggest stars of the company?
No.
Maybe not. I don't know that they ever saw him as a contender versus Hogan, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the question, Myron. You want to do the what ifs, the missed scenario. One of the biggest missed opportunities, if they keep him, he also doesn't go to WWF and become the biggest superstar in the world who kicks their ass in the ratings and basically puts them out of business.
Yeah.
Does WCW stay in business if he doesn't go? Because they're not getting their butts beat because they don't have Austin McMahon. It's a pretty good question.
That was to me, that was a storyline that led me to spend more time during the Monday Night Wars, have my television on WWE more than I had it on WCW.
Correct.
And I think that was the thing that made more people do that, and that was when things started to fall.
Yep. Well, look, there's a guy right now who is the world champion, the WWE champion to be exact. And one of the ones that I got that was kind of I was like, hey, we got to have some AEW stuff in here too. So here's the thing. Missed opportunity. AEW not pulling the trigger on Cody Rhodes as their AEW world champion. So backstory again. We know a lot of people that listen are big WWE fans, may not be as familiar with AEW. So let's set the background a little bit for you. Obviously, Cody was one of the founders. Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Tony Khan, etc. They all find it. He was really the first babyface, like the major babyface star they had, because at least I go back to the Jericho comment of earlier of saying they needed Jericho because, by the way, that was on the Tapped In show. That wasn't on this show. My brain, literally recording these shows, my brain just blurred together. Why did, it literally just blurred two shows together. Other than Jericho, Cody Rhodes was probably one of the most recognizable faces because he at least had been in WWE. I understand people are going to think this is blasphemous, but there are a lot of people that had no clue who the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, any of those guys were because they were in New Japan and they were in At least people know who Cody Rhodes was. So he was really their first major babyface.
And a part of the company.
He founded this company, right. But then for some reason, Full Gear 2019, he put this stipulation on a match that he had never challenged for the AEW title if he lost to Jericho. And, of course, MJF turns on him. He does lose. So now he's completely boxed out of the title picture permanently. I remember when this happened, and literally the first thought I thought was they have to figure out some kind of an angle, some kind of story to get out of this. Like something.
I put a million different thoughts into why they did this. From everything with Cody being the person I get all the word he is, that these are my thoughts, people. Maybe he didn't want to seem like he started this company just so he could put a belt on himself. Maybe he was trying to be selfless. Maybe this was a big angle. He was that would have continued when they booked this. That would have continued later and had a better payoff. Maybe he was trying to make MJF the most hated guy.
Oh, that's 100% what they were going for.
And a lot of it worked, but I think the company was too young at the time for this storyline. This was a really complicated storyline for a new company.
I don't. Hey, look, it's not that it was too early, dude. This story shouldn't have happened. That's the problem. Because, I mean, people started resenting Cody with the story. They thought like maybe it was like a egocentric thing. Like, hey, I'm never going to check. I'm like, so what makes you think you just absolutely earned that right at any given time to be that? He did, but that's not the point. But you can see people pushing back on that. Because like I said earlier, yeah, he was one of the guys, at least people knew who he was from WWE.
Yeah.
But meantime, he started like, hey, I'm going to be the TNT champion and I'm going to be, think about this.
Well, it's a great way to put your undercard over,
Yeah, but who did he put over along the way? Just saying. I mean,
I'm just trying to think. Okay.
My argument is what could have and could have happened was you put the belt on him at some point in 2020. Like, I get it. If you don't want to beat him in 2019, that's cool. But in 2020, 2021 or whatever, then the next thing you know, he's feuding with Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, John Moxley. He's helping bring guys to the top, bring them up to the top level guys. But no, then, because of everything, we do the weird heel storyline. Fans hated that as much as they hated him being boxed in and not being able to have a title shot. So that's...
Do you think this is where they lost guys like me and you? More traditional wrestling guys when they started this angle?
No, it came later. I think it hurt Cody. That was probably, yeah, I would just say it just hurt Cody more than anything. The storyline, because here's the thing, it hurt. Let me back up. Let me say this. It hurt AEW because it hurt Cody, and he was one of their top stars, or should have been one of their top stars, and then turn around, the next thing you know, the world title picture just over time just became essentially, it felt like it was Moxley, Danielson, Jericho. Like it was literally a bunch of WWE guys.
Well, they hadn't made guys like Pockets and those other guys. They needed to get those guys established. They should have left, in my opinion, they should have kept the belts on guys like Cody and until they got the whole company established, and then they could have worked it down to the undercard guys and made something more of the company. But they needed people who were standard bearers. They needed people like Cody.
Yeah. And then, like I said, because then he wins that. Let's say he beats Jericho. Even if he loses it later, he's your first multi-time champion probably. He helps build the legacy of the title.
Yeah.
He feuds with Paige. He feuds with Omega. He helps bring those guys to the forefront because they're wrestling him. He helps bring them to the forefront. And by the way, if he's the top guy of the company and he's a babyface, and he's built the credibility with the fans because he's a babyface world champion. When he eventually turned heel, people give a shit about it. They actually care.
All that merch now?
Cody sells a ton. I'm not saying, but here's the thing. The day's coming, folks. There is a WWE heel Cody Rhodes coming.
Oh, it's going to be good, too.
Because they built him for years, if they built him or whatever. By the way, pause. We're kind of quick answer, no in-depth analysis. One of the theories being thrown out there is if Cody Rhodes won't become Rock's corporate champion, there's a guy that winning that title means a whole lot too. That how ironic would it be if finally John Cena becomes the Rock's corporate champion? It sells out to get to number 17.
Well, you'll have to have a redemption arc. You will have to have a redemption arc.
Do you, though?
Cena cannot retire a heel. That man has done no. You can't do Make-A-Wishes as a heel. Okay?
What if he's not really? What if he's not? What if? Hold on. Hear me out. What if he's not really bad guy? He's just willing to side with The Rock and do whatever The Rock wants to be the 17-time world champion.
No.
And the eventual finish is the babyface turn when he finally drops that title on the way out. And then he gets his redemption at the end. Anyway, just a thought. Wanted to put that out there. tappedOutPod@gmail.com. Send your emails and thoughts on that one. Back to the topic at hand. If Cody's your long-term, think about it, long-term champion, I understand Cody was in the WWE, but a lot of people didn't see him as a WWE guy because he was never the top guy there. He was Stardust. He was he was a tag guy. He was an indie, whatever. But does AEW escape the narrative if they're just an ex-WWE, wrestler company? If that's the guy, that's the measuring stick, that's your world champion. That's the face of their company.
Well, you would build guys against him. You would build guys like Darby Allin against Cody Rhodes. When you build them against standards like the Young Bucks, who, as you've said, nobody recognizes. When you build them against guys that were forced to retire from the WWE, as much as I like Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, whatever you want to call him, he was forced to retire because he was injured. John Moxley, I never have been a fan of. I don't get that whole thing. But if you'd have had Cody Rhodes there, in my opinion, and you'd have built heels against or built baby faces against a heel Cody, I think it would have meant something.
But I think they should have built some homegrown guys using Cody as the measuring stick to bring along the way or whatever. Yes. But anyway, some quick thoughts because we're running out of time here. I knew we wouldn't get through all of these. What would we have done? I think I've already answered that question. Don't put the stipulation on the match at all. If you wanted Jericho to win and to continue to be the champion, he could have lost clean, and Cody keeps chasing him. It happens, folks. It doesn't really matter. It's not the end of the world. By 2020, Cody could have been your champion, by the way, because after 2020, he was stuck in the mid-card. Now, mid-card titles, but he was a mid-card guy. He was literally a main event guy, just perpetually stuck in a mid-card because there's no place for him because he can't win the title.
Do you think he was immune to the Tony Khan booking in the position he was at? Or do you think he was also one of the guys that got into that weird Tony thinks this is a good idea type stuff?
I know he had a lot of say in his, and Tony probably just was kind of like, all right, whatever, do your thing or whatever. But look, I get it. If you didn't want to win, don't win. Win the title the next year. Have a run for about a year or so plus as the babyface champion. 2021, let's say things didn't change and the fans still kind of started regurgitating up Cody Rhodes and they were still turn him heel. Then he feuds again with Hangman, MJF, Darby Allin, somebody like that as a heel, and he passes the torch on and he drops the belt and he lifts those guys up.
Yeah.
That's just kind of
there's no nevers in professional wrestling. That's what we have to remind ourselves. Oh, he never could challenge. Oh, they can fix that. Oh, they could come up with a stipulation. They could come up with, you have to win your right to challenge for it by going through a gauntlet and then build that up.
Right.
So, folks, me and Nick will book your promotion.
No, I will not. I don't know. I always tell everybody I'm not smart enough I can book anything in hindsight. That's easy. Look, but like this, here's the other. Before we move on, the last question I'm going to ask you on this: if Cody's your champion multiple times by the point where I'm about to ask you the question, he's a multiple time champion. He's probably way happier. I don't think we'll ever really know what happened at the end. But does he leave for WWE if he's the multi-time champion? He's helped lift guys up. He's helped make stars. He's had these big feuds with these guys, at the top level. Does Tony see him as irreplaceable? Or I just can't let you go for figuring it out.
I can't see how you would look at that man in those beautiful suits with that beautiful wife and child and the way he carries himself and the way he talks and let him go at any price. At any price.
Yeah. So, hey, look, the other one we're going to do, I'm literally going to jump the notes, Myron. So if you're going to follow me through here, I'm going to jump all the way to the end to the last one because I want to mix it up a little bit. There is one we're jumping. If you, again, are a Patreon member, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. If you're a paid member, there's another whole scenario, but I'm going to jump it so you can read that into the show notes and send us your thoughts to tappedoutpod@gmail.com.
Good thing about this one is we may be corrected by people we know in person.
It could happen. Last one, I do want to mix it up a little bit and bring in a TNA one. Literally had a friend of the show send me this one, so I said, hey, we're going to use this one. Missed opportunities. Like, how did TNA let AJ Styles walk? Like, it makes no sense at all whatsoever how they, let this happen.
Well, he was their guy. He was TNA. I mean, he had it all. He was the guy. But at the time, wasn't TNA about to walk?
No. It came down. They offered him a contract, but it was a stupid contract. We'll get to some of that.
Yeah, but
he was literally they always thought the homegrown talent. That was AJ Styles, multiple time world champion, multiple time X Division champion, face of the company, feuded with Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Christopher Daniels, Jeff Jarrett, all of these parties, whatever. Well, then 2013 rolls around. The company was struggling financially, yes, but they weren't going out of business. But then you had the nerve to ask that guy to take how much of a pay cut, Myron? Read those notes.
Half a pay cut. Dixie Carter loved wrestling, apparently. But a lot, as any other wrestling fan who gets involved in wrestling, who's not a business person, they lose their shirt. And you need to be, just our experience, folks, from watching wrestling promotions fail, you need to be just as much of a business person as you need to be a wrestling fan. And you can't let your big star go for a pay cut. You should have released other people to justify his salary.
Sometimes I get it. Numbers, it is a business decision. I kind of understand why they did it, but on the other hand, you're kind of like, but you can't let that happen.
Yeah.
You can't let it get to that point. Like, there's sometimes it's like the problem's not here. The problem was somewhere prior to that we let it get that far. Yeah. So essentially, they asked him to take the pay cut. Things just kind of went. And listen, I get it. The guy's like, dude, I've had this company on my back for years, but you want me to take a pay cut? Like, what is wrong with you? So, and of course, negotiations collapsed, blah, blah, blah. 2014, he's gone.
And this was probably the biggest spark ever, is going to Japan. Don't you think?
Yeah, he joins New Japan. Just kind of goes on, and the next thing you know, there's they start the Bullet Club, and he joins. Well, Bullet Club started, he replaces, etc. with Finn, etc., whatever. You get that path there.
Yeah.
That's not where we're going. The problem is the reason it's such a mistake for TNA. Like, he was their guy. Like, when they talked about like TNA homegrown talent, TNA originals, Jeff calls it that a lot. TNA originals is kind of a Jeff Jarrett thing. He talks about it a lot. He was their guy that represented like the latch to like, we can make our own stars. I felt like when he walked, it became, hey, they're going to hitch their wagons to Angle, Nash, Hogan, and so they just became.
Sounds like WCW a lot.
Well, it just sounds like we're just going to take the older guys that Bob or whatever, not the or the guys that were WWE guys.
That's what I'm terrified of happening with AEW, is
Correct.
them continuing to book all these older stars and not build their own talent. This is something that's happened multiple times in wrestling companies in the past. You can't put the what's the word they use for that? Not the crown. You can't put the whatever on some guy and expect him to run with it if they're not in the company and understand things. And I think you were better off building talent and putting them with established talent to make them more.
The problem was, Myron, they just, if you're, this happens in sports too. I say this a lot. This is a coach thing that I say a lot. People are quick to go like, fire the coach. And I'm like, who are you replacing him with? And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, okay, you better have a good option. The day the reality sets in that AJ Styles is walking, you better have made the guy to replace him. Now, harder, easier said than done. Look, how about this? Nick Aldis was an option. That he was Magnus at that, but they strolled him out there to try to be an option. Ethan Carter III, Bobby Lashley even, and they didn't connect on the same level. Like he had been coming ingrained with TNA, AJ Styles, but now, how ticked off are the fans? Now they're seeing him in New Japan. He becomes a champion over there. He gets involved with the Bullet Club, on and on and on. And then, by the way, eventually, he does make his way to WWE, and he's had one heck of a career there. He's done okay for himself, I think, there. He's probably made more money there combined than he does in anywhere else. After that, TNA just kind of started the downslide. That was the problem. They had already started losing some money and some things, but the reason I think it hurt them also, by the way, I think there is a come to reality moment when AJ Styles walks out the door. There are other talents sitting in that locker room that look around and go, if they let AJ walk, they'll let any of us walk.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to have been bad. It had to have been bad for morale. And when you look at it, you got to look at the other guy sitting there in the locker room. He left, and he's a bigger star than ever. Why should I stay? And who have they built since him to keep that company going?
It's tough, man.
Hendry? Or did they bring in Hendry from the Indies?
Yeah, but still, like, I will give credit. Yeah, you could make that case. Jordan Grace may be the latest one that they've built. Now, granted, here's the problem. They're not who they were then. So the measuring stick's got to be a little bit different because you can't compare, like, I get it. Here we go. Now backpedal up, Nick defends TNA, right? There was that time period that everybody was like TNA, LOL, blah, blah, blah. People forget there was a time that, and I know different time, TV viewerships change, whatever. There was a time that wasn't unusual that TNA was just rocking $1 million+, $1.5 million every single week.
Yeah.
I mean, they were on Spike and they were just rocking and rolling. They were doing good. They had some crazy peaks at times where they were doing even better than that. So you can't say like that because they built AJ Styles under a banner that was now over the stretch. He was there from day one when they were running weekly pay-per-views, et cetera, whatever, or, as well. But at the end of the day, it's tough to do that now when they're on Axis and they're getting 100,000, 120, whatever, 1,000 people watching the show a week. So I would say you could still make the case Jordan Grace was they made her in a similar fashion, but you can't reach the same levels because the numbers are all out of whack.
Yeah, and I think the WWE deal will help them, deal, but I don't think they'll ever create another AJ Styles.
We never know. The problem is the reason why they may not is because they're never going to get to keep somebody that long. When they get to the status of do they have enough money to hold on to them would be the question. But
they may have the ability to get the ratings and the TV deals now with the the WB deals, but I doubt they'll ever reach that level as far as
who
star
knows?
talent.
So that's missed opportunities, right, man? That's what we were talking about today. But look, before we get out of here, we always want to remind you, make sure you are checking us out on one of two places. I prefer to say both. TappedOutPod.com is our YouTube channel, and we get it. We got a lot of people that listen, watch there. Make sure you're liking the page, subscribing to the page, turn that little notification on so you don't miss any episodes. But, of course, if you really want to hammer home a ton of content, patreon.com/TappedOutPod. You get the shows early. You get extra shows. The Georgia Wrestling Spotlight is only available on Patreon. You get the show notes if you're at the $1 level. And I promise you, there's always stuff that we don't get into. There's just way too much detail in those notes that we just can't get to all of them. A whole lot of content there. Patreon.com/TappedOutPod. And like we said, guys, send in tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Send in the feedback. What you like, what you don't like, what would you, I get it. We can't change like everything one person, but if we see the majority of people want something different, we'll change it up. We'll mix it up for you because that's what we're here to do, and that's to create the content you want to hear and let us know what you think of the new formats with the what ifs and the missed opportunities, and it's broader, looking back versus, and we'll do the chatter at the beginning about
help us
stuff.
Help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, that's everything for this week. Anything to add before we get out of here, man?
Yeah, last weekend, I went to 3 independent shows, 3 nights, 3 completely different independent shows. I loved every one of them. Y'all should check out these shows whenever you can. There's always, wherever you are in the world, there's an indie wrestling show around you somewhere. And the benefit show on Saturday night for Rodney Hicks did a great bit of money. I really am impressed with the community and the people that show up in independent wrestling. Bless you. I look forward to seeing you at the next matches.
Yeah, man. And look, you brought up about the show. Another one of the benefits of the Patreon site is we do put up weekly. I do not take credit for it. I completely credit Phil Stamper. He compiles a list. It's a national list of shows across the country. I put it on there just because, to be blunt, I was putting it in other places, and the character limits were just like, it just doesn't let it happen. So Patreon will let me put the entire list there. And you literally, they have links in them. You can click on them to go to their Facebook pages, or their ticket pages, or whatever. So check it out. Another reason why you should be a member of Patreon. And by the way, that is a free thing that I do every week because it is Phil's list. I'm just sharing it there on the thing, and I want everybody to be able to see that one. So anything else for you, brother?
Come up and shake my hand if you see me at a show. We'll talk. Love y'all. Can't wait.
All right, man. Well, what's the old saying, man? If I got nothing and you got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.